So let me go ahead and get started. My name is Lanny Muehlrath, and I have invited you today for a very important conversation. And as you can tell from the topic title, what I'd like to take a look at today is Christmas cravings and holiday hankerings. And there are three causes of cravings, and I want to share a little bit about that with you and give you some strategies for how to overcome them. I'd also like to be able to spend some time towards the end of the conversation for a little bit of question and answer in case there's some specific concerns I can help you address. And I also want to take at least a mindful minute to have some mindfulness practice together, because that's directly connected with what has become a really powerful way for me to navigate life's ups and downs and changing moods, which includes cravings. That said, what we're going to do is really focus on if you have a copy of The Mindful Vegan, I have a whole chapter on cravings, and the lesson that we're going to be diving in deeper is in there, page 192, 193. It's all about cravings and where they come from leads into that, and then cravings ground zero is on about page 200. So I'm going to be talking about this topic. So this is good. If you've got the book, you can go in as a resource and dive in a little bit deeper. And if you don't have the book, you know a place to go to get some backup information. Before I get started, though, on these causes of cravings and how to navigate them, I want to give a background about what gave birth to my idea for this first what I hope to be a series of mindful vegan moments. And that means bringing our dietary aspirations and our aspirations for living a compassionate, kind life and eating mindfully together in one place. And this was about a week ago, and maybe you're aware, I noticed that already there were things popping up online all over the place already focusing on weight loss for the new year. Now, it's not like a focus on losing weight isn't there ubiquitous year-round, but this all seems to come to a head at this time of the year, doesn't it? And there's this tension created between new year, new you, getting started, let's lose the weight, and this time of year when all of these temptations are around us, and these connections with our emotional history, our families, food, comfort food, and all those things together. And it really strikes me in the heart. It's very painful to me with all this connection, or not connection, all this focus on weight loss actually misses the point. The points of pain, which are maybe mindless snacking or cravings or mindless eating or overeating or stress eating, all of these things that we seek to obliterate by focusing on the weight loss, really misses the point. And it also puts a focus on creating a body ideal and fitting into a certain perspective that is perpetuated through the diet industry and through the food industry, even in the plant-based industry. We've got a whole big focus on this physical perfection. And what I would like to do is, instead of striving to become smaller and fit into some ideal, is to really open and expand to our best capacity of happiness and health and kindness and peace and balanced living. And that's, of course, why I put together the Mindful Vegan book. To that end, at the same time, this time of year, there is a rise in our challenges around food and eating. Even if during the rest of the year we have managed to put together a pretty good kitchen way of eating, a way of becoming joyful around eating and becoming healthy with our foods and establishing a good relationship with that, it can rise more to a challenge point at this time of year. And maybe many people here with us today are still experiencing challenges throughout the year. So this, to bring us to this point in time, my getting confronted with all the weight loss, let's lose the weight, let's cut out all these foods so we can get smaller, and here we are at a time when there's all this temptation around. So this made me think, how can I step up to the plate on this challenge of feeling pain and distress over this constant press to lose weight, lose one thing or another, and yet meet the need that is present with us at this point in time. And I thought, how about starting with the cravings? So let's get started with the three cravings and three sources of cravings. For those of you who are just joining us, that's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to also make sure that we all have a minute of mindfulness practice together, and then I'm going to open this up to questions. The three sources of cravings are, number one is deprivation. And this shows itself in a couple different ways. This first source of craving is the most important of the three that I'm going to share with you today. And deprivation has two faces, and the first face is the one that is the most important of the two faces, and that is simply not being well fed and eating enough on time. If you are eating recklessly in any fashion, and let me describe that to you. Reckless eating would be, in one way, not eating on time, and that means in response to your hunger signals. If you do not respond to your hunger signals when they present themselves to you, which is simply being a good animal, you're hungry, you should eat, then what happens is you are sending your body the message that there's not food availability for you right now. So what we're going to have to do is make sure that later on we drive up those hunger signals more and more so that this body gets itself to some food. We think, oh, I'm too busy to eat, I'll just eat later. And if we're not prepared later with quality food to eat, then the problem can exacerbate. So if you deprive yourself of this primary need of meeting your hunger signals with quality food when they present themselves to you, you are driving up this situation where you are creating a stored hunger and an accelerated hunger later in the day that is going to make it more interesting for you to, one, be sure to overeat in compensation for what you haven't eaten when your body was sending hunger signals, and it's going to drive up your biochemistry of being interested in, guess what, high fat, high sugar rich foods that are best designed for storing fuel on your body. This is because your body, if you're being, like I described, reckless eating and not eating on time, your body doesn't know, oh, lunch is later, or we're just trying to cut back a little bit at this certain meal during the day. It simply knows there isn't enough food availability. So as you're looking at this shift that I make in the Mindful Vegan, I describe it in depth here too. If you are first making this shift to awareness of your body's hunger signals and the importance of meeting that need, then it's going to take a little bit of a paradigm change for you to see it in that way. We are long habituated to this one way of eating recklessly, not eating when our body is hungry, not eating enough, delaying eating, skipping a meal, trying to medicate our hunger. In other words, just drink some water instead, or I'll just exercise instead, or I'll eat something later and I can handle the hunger signals right now. This is, I don't know how to say, I'm going to say it again. This actually dries up your hunger later in the day and actually is the first driver of cravings. If you aren't meeting hunger signals, which is your primary form of your primary survival need is to get food. And if you don't give your body that when it asks for it, this means that it's going to drive up those cravings for later in the day for either too much food or too rich food. All right. So we're still on the first origin of cravings, and that is deprivation. Deprivation of meeting hunger signals. The other kind of deprivation is actually satiety-specific deprivation. In other words, if you have favorite flavors and favorite foods that you enjoy and you decided to cut them out of your diet, or they're not appropriate to your new dietary ideal, then you are actually, if you do that across the board, you are making such a shift in your body's what your body and tastes are used to with being satisfied. And this can be different for all of us culturally or pertaining to our family. But this is why I suggest as you're making these changes that find healthful alternatives to foods that you may be seeking to eliminate. And there are a lot of places online that you can go to find vegan and healthful alternatives for favorite flavors that you may be used to. Don't feel like you have to cut all these favorite flavors out. Simply find replacements. So just to recap on the origins of cravings, number one, then we'll go on to number two. Number one is deprivation. First, in meeting your body's fuel signal needs. That's the biggest driver of cravings, if you're not eating enough food when your body asks for it. And second is satiety specific or flavor specific hunger. If you can meet the needs of this first origin of cravings, deprivation of fuel when your body asks for it, you can eliminate 99% of what presents itself to you as cravings. If your body is well fed on time, it ceases to cry out because of what I just described in cravings for too much food or too much hot, rich food later in the day, because you have met your primary fuel signal need. When I first decided to shift to mindful eating instead of structured dietary lifestyle as I knew it, and I talk about this in the Mindful Vegan in the chapter called it's a breakthrough moment, or my watershed moment, is when, having begun to practice mindfulness, and I began to realize what tension I had created around food and eating because of my diet lifestyle, even associated with healthful vegetarian eating. This was enforced from the outside with a food plan, with food restrictions, and it had created so much tension with food eating in my body and exacerbated what was a weight problem at the same time. When I decided to shift to eating mindfully, which was paying attention to hunger and fullness signals, meeting those needs when met, the cravings, the emotional eating, what I thought was food addiction, vanished. Very important to understand. So let's move on to number two. Again, for those of you just joining us, we're talking about the three origins of cravings, and I do go through this in the cravings chapter in the Mindful Vegan, so you can read in depth in there. But it's nice to have the conversation, isn't it, in real time? Let's go on to source number two of cravings. And number two is environmental cues. For example, you walk into the holiday party and you didn't think you weren't really hungry before you got there, because guess what? You ate from earlier in the day, you ate a full breakfast and a full lunch and a full meal in between as needed, so you didn't arrive hungry for whatever was going to present itself to you. But still, that stack of familiar Christmas cookies or your favorite dip or your favorite whatever is there on the table, and it looks interesting to you. Now, our habit, and as if you have been, and I have had a conversation for any length of time, you know that I like to call, instead of saying habits, I like to say practices, because a practice is simply something, a habit is something we practice over and over again. So if our practice has been to see something and be interested into it, and all of a sudden escalate that into a craving, you've created a mental shift in yourself where you think, I am craving that food, and then the war with cravings begins. Here's the thing with environmental cues that become escalated to cravings. We are designed through evolution to be highly interested in food that is in the environment. Now think about it. If you are a wild animal or an animal of any kind, which let's not forget that's what we are, then if you are not aware of or cued into food availability in the environment, then you might simply walk by it without partaking of what may be an important fuel source. So you walk into the holiday party and there is the environmental cue of food laid out. You're cued into it because evolutionarily, this is a good thing. Is there fuel available? Yes. Do I need it? Well, if you're well fed, you may or you may not. So instead of escalating this to a craving, you can now evaluate it from a different standpoint. Don't be so quick to judge yourself that you're craving something if you are simply interested in it. Can you take a step back and say, that food looks really interesting to me. Now, am I really hungry? And through your mindfulness practice, which I teach in the Mindful Vegan, you are learning to navigate the not only thoughts as they present themselves to you, but also the physical sensations as they present themselves to you through the day. And this includes your hunger and fullness signals. So you can navigate and see if there is hunger, and if so, then it's a good time to go ahead and partake. And if you have been well fed from early in the day, then you will have better discriminatory process available to you about what to select and how much to select. So environmental cues is the second source of cravings. And we, just to recap, if food looks interesting to you, do not be so quick to automatically escalate that to a craving. Step back and evaluate, am I hungry? And if you are, then to go ahead and proceed and partake. And if you're not, then you'll be able to navigate that sensation and move right on. This may sound astonishing to you, and it was actually quite a surprise to me that this actually came true. When I was well fed early enough on time, I could be presented by these environmental cues and not feel compelled or automatically put in this fight with eat or not eat. I could actually bypass rich foods and not be preoccupied with them, or I could have a small amount if I was hungry, or if it was something that I'd set aside as, oh, I'm going to go ahead and have a treat on that at that party tonight. Because I no longer had to fear that my deprivation craving, which was door number one that we already talked about, was going to necessarily take hold and drive me to eat and overeat because I had makeup eating to do. Does that make sense? All right, so we had deprivation is number one. If you take care of deprivation by eating enough on time, you take care of 99% of the other cravings that come up. Number two was environmental cues. All of a sudden food presents itself to you like the holiday cookies or the buffet table or whatever it is that's happening at this time of year. You can navigate those to see, is the environmental cue simply because being a good animal, I'm aware that there's food in the environment, or is it and I've accelerated that to a craving, or is it that I'm really hungry? And then you can make a good judgment at that point about whether you to partake or not and to enjoy what you do. So the third source of cravings is emotional reactivity. Notice I didn't say emotions, I said emotional reactivity. If in your history of life you have connected a certain form of food, eating in general, the edible connection with as a reaction to an emotional state, whether that's sadness or depression or excitement or happiness or anxiety, then it may be that that memory will well up to you in a habituated reactivity to that emotion. This was very present for me for much of my life, for probably the first 30 or 40 years. I had a practice of reacting to emotion through a food connection. Now, this means that if you have built up this reactivity of reacting to an emotion with a certain food response, and it may be even a specific food that you always connect with a certain emotional reaction, that may come up again in your mind. Again, then all of a sudden we think, oh, I crave chocolate. This is because historically you have reacted to an emotion with that particular food. But if you have taken care of craving, desire, problem number one, which is the deprivation, and you are well fed, then you can navigate emotional reactivity in a whole new way. If you are not well fed, if you are hungry, then the acceleration to craving is actually biologically driven, combined with your emotional reactivity, and you will get caught in that war with food eating in your body. Should I eat it? Shouldn't I eat it? Either following through or trying to fight it as hard as you can. So to recap, I want to make it very clear, and hopefully as we've gone through these 3 reasons, you can see why if you take care of number 1, deprivation, that numbers 2 and 3 of the reasons for the origins of cravings are going to actually dissolve. And combined with a mindfulness practice that gives you the ability to navigate these different situations and actually make a quick evaluation of which kind of origin of craving is this? Is this deprivation because I didn't eat well enough today, earlier today, or this week, or this month, or this year? That's going to eliminate the others. Then we have environmental cues where food presents itself to you. If you've taken care of the deprivation, you'll have a whole different scenario with which to approach that kind of cue. And number 3 is an emotional reactivity. There are also 3 usual responses that we have, or reactions that we have to these cravings. So I want to briefly cover those and then direct you to the cravings chapter in the Mindful Vegan to dive into to review this again. Usually we either will react to it by going ahead and indulging, or we will put up a fight with that craving and do our best to just white knuckle through it. Both of these, or we try to do some kind of replacement, like eat something healthy instead. All 3 of these reinforce the energy of craving. By simply following through and indulging in the craving, we will then continue to repeat that practice. It's called the craving loop. And if we fight it as hard as we can and stay mentally preoccupied with the fight, we're still reinforcing it. And if we do a replacement, like eat something else instead, with this craving in place, we are also reinforcing it. What you can do instead is use the mindful approach. You simply step back, and if indeed you are well fed so that it is not from deprivation, you can notice that craving, like every other emotion, has a physical sensation to it. Just like anger, just like happiness, just like excitement, craving has a physical component. Think about it. Think back to the last time you craved something. To me, craving is almost like a reaching out or a leaning forward. It's some kind of tension that has to be satisfied. So what you can do, and this works really well with door number 3, which was the emotional reactivity as a cause of craving. If indeed you are well fed and you know that, oh, that is simply something that I've reacted to that particular emotion with this kind of food element over and over again, you can turn your attention back to your body and do a body survey and say, what does this feel like in my body, this craving? And guess what? Just like every other emotion, cravings, as long as you're not indulging it or fighting it, actually dissolves within a few seconds. All of our emotions are always rising and falling. Our bodies are always changing, one thing through another. You start to learn this through mindfulness practice, that every thoughts come and go, emotions come and go, physical sensations come and go. And through the practice, the mindfulness practices I teach in the Mindful Vegan, you become skilled at how to navigate these changes without having to be reactive. And this is why, as it says in the title, you have a path to restoring happiness and balance and peace, because you're not in this reactive state. Most of our day, we're reacting to thought, we're reacting to physical sensations, and one of those can be cravings. And through mindfulness practice, you learn to be able to navigate these more skillfully. So let's do this. Thank you. Oh, this is wonderful. All these comments. I have not looked at a single one of them because I've been focused on presenting content to you. So what I'd like to do is, before we open this up to questions, is to do 1 minute together of mindfulness practice so that we can establish that. I always like to reinforce exactly what I am teaching, and that is by becoming more mindful through being connected in the present moment we can navigate all of life's challenges more skillfully, and that includes the three sources of cravings that I've just described them to you. So wherever you are, of course, if you're driving in a car right now, then I would like you to do this. Do not close your eyes. Do not, disconnect from everything around you. But if you are in a place where you can do that, what I'd like you to do is put everything else aside, have your seat on your chair or on the floor or wherever you are. Let's go quickly through pair, which is the way I set up mindfulness practice. Your position is whether seated chair or on the floor or even standing. I'm standing right now. Feel your body in space. Have your body erect without tension, at ease yet attentive. Bring your attention to your anchor point, and we're going to bring that place to right where our breath is entering our body. So right beneath your nose and above your upper lip, where your breath is coming in, bring your attention there. This is where we're going to do our 1 minute of anchor focus to help us bring in concentration. Close your eyes gently. Don't worry, I will time us for a minute. Set your intention of being with me, present right here, right now, feeling the breath for 1 minute. And every time your mind wanders away, whether to check your email, check your social feed, check your anything, simply bring your attention back to the point of anchor. So, and we begin for 1 minute. Where are you now? Keep coming back to the breath. And then gently take another breath in and open your eyes, and here we are. Thank you for taking that minute with me. Now, what I'd like to do is be here for you. If there's some questions anyone has, that just go ahead and pop them in. If I scroll back through here, oh, thank you for the hugs. This is great. Good. Reading the book right now. I'm so glad to see the positive responses to the book. My wish today is that you come away with this with some encouragement about living more happily and peacefully with food eating in your body, and also to offset what is already present as we move into the holidays is going to be even more present as we move forward after the holidays, and that is the focus on the weight loss, which I'm not going to deny that for some of us losing weight can be important, but let me tell you, when I realized that restoring this healthy relationship with food eating in my body was the most important thing, and getting away from looking at trying to figure out any way to get poundage off my body, that is actually when I restored happiness, and actually when my body let go of some 40 extra pounds that stayed off 20 years ago. So I don't want to diminish if for health reasons, for any other reasons that you need to shed a few, but I want to put the emphasis where it should be. And I also want to encourage those of you who maybe have struggled for years with maybe this last 5 or 10 pounds. Maybe that was, your body knows better what your natural healthy weight is than your ideal or what your fantasy weight is. And that's a whole other topic for discussion. Okay, here, Marla says, do you have advice for navigating the vegan food police? It seems like often when I post recipes or links to recipes, which are all vegan, of course, other vegans will chime in with complaints about this or that ingredient, derailing the thread and hijacking it. Do you have advice for politely but firmly telling people that you're not here to be policed? I think that the way you have stated that is exactly beautiful. That and if it's easier to know what to say in that particular situation. when you are feeling more grounded and clear with what your intention is. And this way, when, for example, when I do a presentation, I'm doing a lot of presentations on book tour now with a mindful vegan, and I know this content through and through. So what I do, the best way that I prepare for a presentation is to make sure that I have had a good solid time of mindfulness practice that morning, and even the day before. I will be looking ahead. How can I best prepare for this? As long as I know my content and review my notes. The day of presentation, I actually don't go through and look through my key points and try to rehearse and study that, because I realize that whenever I am presenting to a group or being present with a group, the best gift that I can give, besides knowing my content, is being present in the moment with these people, because every group, though there are similarities, is different. Every person there, the room is full of human beings, all with different needs, all with different anxieties, points of happiness, points of misery that day. And if I can simply be present and slow down and respond to questions or comments in the moment, I'm far more effective at being able to reach hearts and minds. So perhaps thinking about it that way. Maybe before you do post something like that, if you go into it with an anxiety about, oh, the police are going to come out of the closet, what am I going to say? What are the possible points that they could talk against? Being mindful of appropriate responses is one thing, but actually being present with how to respond in the moment to people who may come forward is another thing. So if you are feeling confident in your wish for what your post is and who you are and your relationship with food eating in your body, that is the most important thing. Jen says, do you avoid skip invitations to events where non-vegan food is being served? No, because all family events are places where non-vegan food is being served. And Jen, I think maybe the best answer to that is what's coming up to me as I respond to your question is my best way or avenues of advancing the message that is important to me, which is to cause the least harm possible with choices that I make with food and with other elements, things that I use or buy in my life, and to create a situation of love and harmony around me, meaning that people are happy to be in my company, and that they're happy about the any kind of message that I may be sending through my thought, word, and deed. Then I bring that as I can to these events. So I am present with family to the best of my ability. And it's not that I'm not aware of being really pained by what I may see on a table. For example, recently I was at a family event and there was like this pile of chicken legs or wings or some body parts on a platter. And that's what I see. That's probably what you see, is this pile of dead animal parts. And so I navigate the discomfort and the tension around that in my body, and I focus on seeking how can I advance the message of love and kindness, which is actually when that is perceived and when that is what we bring to the forefront of our lives, that is when we are most likely to make choices compatible with that. That's where I go. So I'm going to a long answer to your question. So quick answer is no, I don't not go to those events. I try to bring a presence to them. All right, AJ Jablonski says, would you restate the concept you described earlier, a natural interest in food around you versus a craving, and how to navigate that moment? That was key for me, but I need to hear it again to completely get it. Okay, so this was the environmental cues, the number 2 for cravings, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? I'll just assume that's it unless I hear from you again. So environmental cues is food is around you that may be interesting to you. And the foods that you walk into a party, for example, and there's a buffet there, and it can really connect with our past, things that we've enjoyed before, maybe emotional connections, because food and emotions can be connected. Family and comfort are connected. We don't want to deny that. But if the environmental cue presents itself first, please recognize that as an animal, your job, one of your physical capacities, is to recognize food in the environment. Because again, let's say you are just an animal walking through the woods, and if you're not aware of food in the environment, then you might walk right by it without partaking of some very important fuel. So take this pressure off yourself that just because something looks interesting to you to eat, even though you're not really hungry, that this is a craving and that sets up that war. Realize, oh, this is just a natural part of being a human being, is interest in food, and particularly interested in high-fat, high-sugar foods, because guess what? As an animal, your best survival tools are those foods that bring a lot of calories and energy for your body to store against future famine. So let's not accelerate this into thinking it's some big emotional war and that you're a bad person because you're craving the brownies and you should have them, you shouldn't have them. See how this can get out of whack. And remember, think back to number one, origin of cravings is deprivation. If you haven't eaten well enough on time from early in the day, then the environmental cue is going to first give you an opportunity to eat. But if you haven't been well fed from early in the day, it's going to make those higher energy foods more and more interesting, and perhaps more and more difficult to make a different choice of. So once you've made, you asked for how to navigate that. First, see if you can step back and say, first, take the pressure off yourself. Environmental cues, of course, I'm an animal. Of course, I'm interested in food in the environment. Now, let's see if I can navigate. Am I really hungry? Does high-quality food really look good to me? And if so, then eat some. And if not, then if you've been well fed from early in the day and you've prepared, there's a party, I want to save a room for a little bit of a treat, then go ahead and have some of that. But if you haven't put it into this fight of it's got to be all or nothing, then that problem will dissolve for you. And I used to think I was a food addict. I used to think I was an emotionally eater. I thought I was addicted to sweets. But once I took care of this, eating well enough in the day, and also learned how to navigate these sensations around, well, what is it that's really making me interested in that food? These problems dissolved. So I hope that was helpful to you. Okay, good. She says, yes, thanks. Marla says, I'm experimenting with eliminating a common food to work on some health issues because I'm curious as it may be a source of it. Okay, while it's coming from an intuitive perspective with love and presence and patience, I was wondering how to do this while avoiding getting into the trap of restriction and diet culture. Oh, you know, that's a good point, because historically, those of us who have come and gone from diets, if we have decide to eliminate any particular food for whatever reason, it easily hooks that historic sensation of deprivation, and you can get in a little war with it. So here is what I would do with that. I would use the tools of mindfulness in day 8 and 9, where I talk about the bodily sensations, and we do the body survey. You start to, what happens, for those of you who are not familiar with the Mindful Vegan, oh, it's right behind me. you learn how to navigate not only be aware of thoughts as they're coming or going and not to have to be hijacked by them. You start to learn how to create a little space around them so you can choose more skillfully which thoughts you go with. You also learn to navigate the physical sensations of your body. And this idea that you're talking about, Marla, of this conflict of, oh no, it's bringing up that tension around that, it's almost like a diet mentality, should not have this food. Navigate those sensations. So what does that actually feel like in your body? Is it a tightness in your throat? Is it a knot in your gut? Is it tight shoulders? Because it brings back the whole war. It's like the whole battle presents itself. I know exactly what you're talking about. So when that thought comes up, all of our thoughts have a physical correlate. So when the thought comes up of not going to have XYZ because I think it may be contributing to a health problem, but it's connected with a deprivation past, what you can do is navigate those sensations in your body. Notice how it may grow, how it may shrink, how it may be uncomfortable, and seek to your mind's going to keep wanting to go into the debate. And that's where you learn to create that space around and let the thought go and bring it right back into the sensations. You will get better and better at being able to navigate those sensations until they actually will dissolve, because as we said earlier in the call, every emotion, every physical sensation, it just comes and goes with a few seconds. And it's only when we set up the fight or get caught in the story, which is all the add-ons, and in this situation, the add-on is diet history, that it becomes problematic. So experiment with navigating the sensations of the emotions coming with that sense of deprivation. I hope that helps. All right, anyone else want to add on today? What I would like to do is to also hear from you about, I'd like to do another mindful moment in this same capacity next week. So please, I have plenty of topics, of course, to pick from, but if there's something that would be near to you that you would like to suggest as a possible topic as we move forward these mindful vegan moments, then please suggest it to me. Because as I said earlier, what I like to do is be present with who is here and what is the need is. Oh, scrolling down here. Okay, Marla says, perfect, thank you. Your book has helped so much. I so appreciate that. Kathy Anderson. Hi, Kathy. Thank you. I'm so sick of people telling me that I'm a food addict. I'll tell you, I can't underscore that enough. And that when we are, first, we're all addicted to food and water and air, all right? If, in other words, we need them to survive. But our interest in eating is, it's now that we understand these sources of cravings, it's a natural phenomenon that we're going to be interested in food. And it's when we don't respect our body's needs for those primary agents of survival that we drive up these cravings, and we accelerate the whole thing and then become really interested in those really rich foods, and then I'm a food addict. And here's the thing, if some people will say, well, okay, well, I know I'm eating enough, I'm overeating on healthy foods. You know what, I should pick that as a whole other topic, because I'm ready to launch into another hour. So let's do that. If that's an interesting topic to you about the why you feel like you may be overeating even on healthy foods, or those problems that brings up, that would be great if you want to phrase that in the form of a question. All right, anyone else real quick? I wanted to give it, I know I timed this for a half hour, but I knew it would probably go on beyond that. So let me give it just another minute or two to see if any other questions come in. D says yes. I don't know what yes is. Maybe that's in agreement. So advice going out of this. I'll close with advice going out of this. One more thing came in from AJ Jablonski. I hope I'm saying your last name. I see a subculture emerging from the whole food plant-based community that's emphasizing calorie counting, and it feels like we're going to soon have vegan Weight Watchers. Have you seen this happening? Absolutely, and I just referred to it, and I wouldn't be surprised. And maybe that's coming down the pike. Maybe with the new year we'll see vegan Weight Watchers. So I don't want to dismiss people who may find counting, weighing, and measuring is successful and helpful to them long term. Some people structure their lives that way and live it out indefinitely in that fashion. For me, I did that on and off for several years, and it never really solved my problem. It just exacerbated it. For every weight loss that was not paying attention to my hunger and fullness signals, I responded with an accelerated net gain. And there is another way. If restricting and counting and measuring and doing all those, there are several programs out there that have it all laid out for you. If that is problematic for you and it is not bringing you, first, a healthy, happy relationship with food, eating your body. Another thing is to being able to maintain a semblance of your naturally healthy weight, not your fantasy weight, not the healthy at any size necessarily, but a naturally healthy weight where you are feeling good in your body, you're feeling strong in your body, and your preoccupation with food and eating has diminished, that's a sign of eating well according to your hunger signals. But if that's the kinds of things you want, which is what it ended up being for me, I decided I'd had it with the deprivations, the cravings, the weight up and down, and the thinking that I was some kind of food addict. I said, what if I just eat mindfully according to what I've been describing to you with our time together today? And this is when all of these other issues dissolve themselves. And so coming from a person who used to think I was addicted to sweets, addicted to food, and now I just find them interesting and can come and go from them. By the way, it's my husband's birthday today. Case in point, I'm making him this from Fran's book. I'm making him this cake. I tell him once a year, honey, it's your birthday. I want you to pick out anything from my vegan cookbooks and I will make it for you. So I started making this last night because it goes overnight in the refrigerator. It's supposed to be for a few hours in the refrigerator. So it's been wrapped up overnight, and today I make the frosting, which is actually this almond milk thing. But I got to tell you, in the old days, I would never have been able to have that sitting up there in the refrigerator. We would have already sliced into it, eaten half of it, or I would have scarfed it down and just made another one. It actually has not been present in my mind, along with the chocolate that goes, this is going to be going in the next layer. This has been in the pantry for a couple weeks because I knew I was going to be making this for Greg. It is such a joy and delight and so much freedom to have these things in the house to partake of or not as I like, because guess what? I've taken care of the primary need of first fueling myself well, feeding my body, being kind to it, and also having a mindfulness practice so that I can learn to navigate disquieting states and different emotions without bringing up my habituated past of connecting it with some kind of refuge in food or whatever it was. And today our focus is on food, and that was mine. All right, I'm going to take off. I see that, thank you, the rest of you coming in. Nancy Miller says, perfect story to explain why eating this way works. Great. And I'm not sure which story. Is it this story, the cake story? Oh, and your chocolate cherry truffles are amazing, AJ says. Can I freeze them to give as gifts later? Yes, smart and brilliant. Good. All right, I expect to see from you, hopefully, and you can add these on later. As you ruin or think about today's conversation, if conversations for next time, topics that you'd like addressed, questions, please add them to the thread, or you can email them to me, and I will happily respond. And thank you for joining me on this Facebook Live. It looks like it was successful. Hopefully the video will take. If you want to review today's lesson before the video is available, or want to read about it, remember the Cravings chapter in here talks about the 3 sources of cravings, how to navigate them, and how to overcome them. And there you have it. So thank you, my friends, for joining me, and I will see you next time.